One of the more predictable outcomes of Brexit is a shortage of labour in Britain in certain sectors. Do the maths, as the Americans put it. Millions of workers over decades came here, mainly from East and Central Europe, usually to find higher wage rates here than they would have been earning at home. And paradoxically, their departure from the British labour market has meant that they have gone home to higher wage rates than were there before they came to Britain, while Britain's labour market has not yet caught up. And there's an obvious shortage in supermarket shelves, in rotting fruit in the fields, and perhaps most importantly, on our motorways. Truckers are in short supply. Now, I've been a fan of truckers as a Transport and General Workers Union veteran of 50 years myself, all of my life, in the days when you could still hitchhike, and I did have to hitchhike. I thought they were the kings of the road. So I've got a soft spot for truckers. So does my next guest. He's Simon Evans, the well-known YouTube creator, the Reverend Simon Sideways, and he joins me now, not in his dog collar, but in a very nice piece of knitwear. Simon, thanks for coming on. I'm right, am I, that the departure of European truckers has left us short on the roads?
Massively short. They came over because, as you say, literally, you've got it right from the beginning. The wages were better over here than they were. The working conditions were better at the time over here than they were over there. But as you say, because there was no drivers over there, they've had to put the wages up. Now, there's been a bit of a change as well in tax, whereas a lot of them were working self-employed and earning a lot more money. Well, that right was taken away from them. So they can now go back and earn the same money as they can here, but the living conditions is, well, when I say the living conditions, how much it costs to live over there is significantly cheaper than it is over here. But the wages over here have been held down for probably about 30 years. If you ask any of the lorry drivers who were about in the late 80s, they were saying that if they were trunking and going abroad perhaps, they would be earning more money than basically they are now. In the whole time that I have been lorry driving, it's only in the last few months have the wages started to go up. There's a guy who, he messaged me, he said, went for a job interview the other day. He said, they offered me £9 something an hour. He said, my daughter has just been offered £11 something for stacking shelves. So, you know, when you think of that, the amount of money it costs to get into the industry is about £3,500. Then you've got periodic training, which is anything from £50 to £100 a sitting. You have to do that once a year, every year. That's for the CPC. That also forced a lot of drivers out of the industry.
So a lot of British drivers have left the labour market, that particular sector, for obvious reasons. £9.40 for driving a big truck. And if you're on a long journey, literally sleeping in a lay-by, this is absurd.
If you're allowed to. A lot of lay-bys.
If you're allowed to. Yeah. Well, in the road that I take, all lay-bys at night are full of truckers. And I think of them every time I drive past them and know that they're not earning the kind of top dollar that they should be. Now, in America, where the union is not just strong, but in fact overwhelmingly dominant, the Teamsters union would insist on hotels for drivers. They'd insist on the best of conditions for drivers. What are things like at the truck stops, for example? There's no decently priced sleeping accommodation. That ought to be all in the driver's package, surely.
Basically, there are some drivers that have to, not all drivers, have to pay for that truck stop out of their own money. That's assuming they can get in because some of them are full. Then you've got the problem of some stops you might end up having all your diesel robbed because there are people that go about stealing fuel. this happens in Europe as well, but it happens a lot in the UK. And if you park up in a lay-by or a truck stop, that's one of the things you have to worry about. There are some truck stops, obviously, that are better than others. However, into that, say, for instance, I was to park at one of the motorway services, I would pay the money, which is about 30 quid. I pay that out of my own pocket, have to claim it back, and it gives me £10 for food. Now, £10 for food in the service station is either a McDonald's, a KFC, a Burger King, or whatever else is, it's not wonderful.
Now, look, this is not just an esoteric interest of yours and mine who like truckers and trucking, because, of course, if we don't have the truckers, we don't have the supplies. The stores will run out. You won't be able to get things that you need because there were not sufficient truckers on the road to bring them to you. Nowadays, so much of our economy is moving by road, and it's inescapable. So what can we do about this? I expounded recently that if there's a shortage of trained drivers, let the government commandeer an abandoned airfield or a disused airfield somewhere, give people free training so that they are capable of driving the big trucks that we have today. Put the wages up. Have a proper minimum wage for truckers. Get the unions involved in organizing the workforce. That's the kind of state-led emergency measures we're going to need, isn't it?
Basically, if you increase the wages a lot, that way you can reduce the hours for each driver. If, as you say, there was, say, for instance, free training we need to get the young into it. And the young aren't interested at the moment because it is quite an isolated job. So there has to be perks of that isolated job, i.e. good living conditions at the truck stops, good working conditions, because we are treated like animals in a lot of the places we go to, and they think that we're literally brain dead. It's embarrassing. But you have to put up with that. It's all part of the job, unfortunately. So better wages, treat us like we're normal human beings, better working conditions. And as you say, if you could get a lot more people from Great Britain to sit their license, right? But they can't afford it. But if the government could do this.
Well, the government has to pay for it. What does it cost, Simon?
It depends, because you've got different categories of license. You've got Class 2, which is the rigid vehicles, and then you've got Class 1. But if you're coming into it from scratch, you have to get a CPC course. That's a lot of money. Well, I don't know how much of that. Because I had grandfather rights, so I just started doing my courses as I went. So if you said for every day's course, £100, 2 weeks, I think, is for the full CPC. But don't quote me on that, because as I say, I haven't done it. But you're looking, if you want to actually get into it from scratch, you're looking at about £3,500.
Well, why can't the state subsidize that and get the money back from a windfall tax on these businesses like the supermarkets and Amazon and so on that have done really well during the pandemic?
Yeah, why can't they? Because what happens is you get the big supermarket chains and they subsidize or they get another operator in to run the transport, and they're the problem mainly. So say, for instance, Co-op have a different company running their transport, as will Morrison's, as will all the other ones. And it's them that literally let the driving or the conditions of the whole job go right down. They're the people that will send, or they'll get the agencies to go straight over to Poland and recruit from there.
Well, how is that possible, Simon, under the new dispensation, now that free movement of labour no longer exists?
This was back then. I mean, I haven't worked in there in the last 6 months, but I know that wherever I go, the predominant language isn't English. It'll be Polish or it'll be Romanian or whatever. But it's the agencies that supply so much of the labour, and they just want an easy, quiet life. They don't want somebody who knows what they're worth or knows what their rights are saying, hang on a minute, this isn't right. So they just employ en bulk people who will work for less. And that's the problem. And because they work for less and work for rougher conditions, they expected everybody else to do it. And a lot of these drivers just said, no, I'm hanging up my keys.
I noticed in the paper this week that Aldi were taking on new drivers. So some of the businesses have got their own fleets and their own drivers. that's the best situation, isn't it? Rather than agencies and independent hauliers being hired by big businesses, household names, but who have no responsibility for the drivers' wages and conditions, or how good the drivers are. I speak as someone who was hit by a truck, thankfully only rather gently. A Romanian truck driver in a left-hand drive truck clipped me just the other week. So we need a good standard of drivers. We need drivers that are not tired, that are properly remunerated and fresh, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. The left-hand drive vehicles are a problem anyway, because there's blind spots, and the amount of times on the motorway or on a dual carriageway or wherever you'll see a foreign vehicle parked up and a small car in front that's been hit by it. So that is a problem. The smaller the companies, the better they treat you, is a fact. So if you've got a massive group that supply lorries to, say, for instance, a numerous amount of places like Lidl, or because I'm not actually sure it's Lidl themselves that are actually put, because at Lidl they used to get nothing but owner drivers in there. So I don't know with regards to Lidl, but one company that's actually making an effort is Kalina. I've seen the advert in Bristol, £45,000 wages.
That's what a trucker should be on. 45, yeah. £50,000. That's what an underground driver would earn at London Transport, and rightly so, and thanks to the RMT. But it's also what a trucker should be earning. And he should have decent places to sleep and decent places to eat and shower and so on.
You can't pull in and get decent food. I mean, I did 70 hours last week, which meant that when I got home, I was too tired to even prepare anything. So that I'm living out of motorway petrol station food. And that's no good for any man, I've got to be honest. So a lot of these lorry drivers that you see that are overweight, it's not through choice in many cases. They just have to eat rubbish or you get nothing at all.
Simon, I could keep on trucking with you for hours. It's been a pleasure talking to you about the Knights of the Road.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's interesting to hear what you've got to say as well.